today's topic is going to be leeks. I'm going to show you the whole life cycle of leeks in our garden. This is how the leeks life begins and also ends. Those are last year's leeks we left in the garden. They usually can overwinter if we have enough snow to protect them, but you can also pull them out in autumn, overwinter them in a sheltered location in a bucket of sand so they won't dry out, and in spring you plant them out. In the second year they already have their main stem formed and their roots down, so they focused on seeding. Those are the seeding stems which they produce. On top of which there's this cluster of dozens of flowers which are not yet open. After a few days, most of those covers will be popping open, and the seed heads will be flowering, and by the end of summer the whole plant dries out and we collect the seed by just cutting the whole seed head and shaking it in a paper bag. Those seeds are collected and stored for winter, and next spring we use them to make leek starts in our vegetable seedling bed. Those are the baby leek plants. We already planted one batch, which I'll show you in a minute. So there's some empty space here along the little row, and what I'll be doing now is planting out those. They're still not perfectly sized, but the weather is good. We had quite a bit of rain yesterday and today, so the whole garden is well watered. Ideally you want each of the seedlings to be about pencil thick, but even with much thinner starts like this one, which is like skewer sized in diameter, it still works as long as you have well formed roots. And even if you don't get like massive leek plants, you can start picking out the smallest first and use them as baby leeks. A little detail I want to turn your attention to is how all the leaves are snipped. We do that a few times during the initial growth, because cutting the leaves promotes new leaf growth at the center, and this is what makes the seedlings grow thicker quicker. You can see that that was the first cut here maybe a month ago, and this was like 2 weeks ago, and this was very recent, and this is the new leaf which will continue growing, and it will be cut also at planting time because you want to reduce evaporation from the leaves. So now I'll be digging those up with my gardening knife, and then I will plant them out in another bed which we prepared yesterday. I've dug out all the leek seedlings, and now my oldest is sorting them into sizes. You can see that their roots are very well developed, which usually is more important than the thickness of the stem. He sorts them into three sizes. Those are the thinnest and those are the thickest, and we plant them out starting with the thickest. And then you basically know that at the end of the row of leeks you have the plants which will not produce the thickest leeks for winter, so you can start harvesting from that end and leave the most vigorous plants to grow and harvest them later and preserve them for winter. Along with the leeks, I'll be planting out some summer savory seedlings, which grew into a super tight bunch, and at one point they fell to the side. And I just wanted to show you how, similar to other plants like tomatoes, the summer savory has this tendency to grow roots along the stem. So that plant was initially growing here, and then it fell down and it rooted along the stem here, maybe 20 centimeters up. So now I'll have to be planting them that way because they are already very well developed. So if you already have better roots here, you can cut the old stem and the original root and just use the new one, but most of those, they don't have very well established roots, so I'll be planting them like this, lying down. So this whole woody stem, it will produce roots. So I've planted the leeks here. This is the second batch, maybe 60 something plants. Here on the inside it's a double row, and those are the tiniest seedlings, so they will be taken out and eaten first, and the ones on the outside, they'll be grown to proper size. Now what is left is to shorten the leaves, just snip the top. This will allow them to root better, lose less water due to evaporation while they settle in their new spot. Of course they'll be watered if we don't get more rain tonight. And here on the other side of this bed we have onion from seed, which will also be cut in a similar way in a minute. And this onion produces nice heads for a single year without going through the phase of onion sets, so it works great for us. It's a late harvest onion. And this is the leeks we planted 2 weeks ago. You can see that it has already grown nicely, most of them. And here is where we did the snip at planting time. Those are the older leaves, and this is the new growth that emerged in that time. And this indicates that the plant has rooted and established nicely. The new growth in the middle, and we'll continue doing this top trim throughout the season, which allows you to have leek leaves, like leek greens, much earlier than the end of the season when we harvest the whole plant. And you can use those for soups or for drying. This has been weeded today, and some peppers have been planted alongside. To sum the whole process, you start with the leek seeds in early spring, where you prepare the seedlings. The seedlings need about 2 months of growth to reach the size I've showed you today. You plant the seedlings out. Usually in our climate, early to mid-July is the perfect time to do that, especially if you have some rain to help them establish. Then you let the leeks grow and harvest in late autumn. Store the mature plants in wet sand in your basement, or if you have a mild winter, they can overwinter by just piling some soil along the stem, just creating a mound to protect the stem and the root. Mound the soil like 20 centimeters up, and in spring, which is the second year of growth, they will produce their flowering stem. They will bloom, and in autumn you collect the seed which will use to start your seedlings next spring. So let's finish today's video on leeks by showing you the bed which is now ready. I have planted here 2 seedlings of Peruvian physalis, which I had nowhere else to plant, and they were ready to go in the ground. Planted a few plants of summer savory here along the border, and they will generally grow out. And then I planted some 65 leek plants here and some 70 or 80 onion here, and in the middle I did the carrot seeds, because this bed was carrots earlier in the season which were harvested, which I forgot to shoot. So yeah, now we are doing late carrots, which will be ready by the end of September, maybe a bit later. And alliums and carrots grow very well in synergy, protecting each other from pests. The other thing that was in this bed was onion sets of I forgot the name of the variety. It's a white onion. Take a photo of the harvest. It was not great, and the reason for that was we had very wet May and early June, but still we got a few kilos out of it, and we harvested the carrots. So now the bed is all ready for another round. What is about to happen here tomorrow is we will cover the whole thing with the roll cover, sitting on those wooden pieces here, because otherwise the little or not so little already birds that come from our neighbors, they will just eat the seeds and spread the mulch outside the bed, which they have already done on many of our other vegetable beds. But we're still thankful for the service they provide in the orchard. They stay mostly there and forage under the trees, so I hope we'll have less pest pressure here as well next season. And the final piece of advice regarding our method of growing leeks, and not just leeks but most of the stuff we grow in the garden, we prefer to use our own seed and do so at any occasion possible. Most of the things growing here in the garden are started from our own seed. I don't mind buying seed, although if we can avoid it, and I advise you as well to avoid it if you have your own seed. It's not so much about the money savings, which also can be substantial if you are purchasing a lot of seed, but for me the most important part of growing our own seed and then plants from the seed is what I think it's called in English landrace creation, landrace gardening. In essence, what we're creating here are varieties which are adapted to our local soil and climate. So even though that leek started as a variety somewhere, someone selected it, after maybe 6 years here now, it's a different variety because it's open pollinated, and it's clear to us that the plants that we're getting are not as big as advertised, even though we're not huge fans of those very thick and massive leeks. So those work better for us, but they're much more adapted to our soil, and we can see the difference of the way they grow and the way they perform. They work much better with less or no irrigation. They work fine in the clay soil that we have. The first year they couldn't overwinter. The winter frost killed them, and the plants that you are now saw in the bed that are flowering, they withstood -18 last winter. So there is definitely something going on here. And when you apply that to more and more stuff that you grow, with the passing of time, what you're getting is something that it's not possible to be bought from any shop anywhere in the world, because nobody but you or maybe your neighbors, if they grow directly from seed, has the same genetic material and plants predisposed to your specific location and to your specific growing conditions. So even if you're not growing leeks, whatever you're growing in your garden, my advice to you is use this season to your advantage and save the seeds of the plants that you like, which seed this year. And in cases of root vegetables and alliums and other crops, you can overwinter them in a protected location, like in your garage or in your basement, and then plant them out next year. We do that with our beets, with carrots, parsnips. I can make a separate video about that so you can see how it works. But there's nothing better than having your genetically improved seeds that work better for your location, for your context, and also you're getting the freshest seeds possible. So that's all for now. I'll see you in the next one.